Welcome to Griffonomics.
Thank you for having me.
So imagine doubling your company's revenue per user, right? Securing a literal lifetime of brand loyalty and just completely neutralizing your competitors' pricing strategies. And doing all of that without acquiring a single new customer, without raising your prices a single cent, and without altering the chemical makeup of your product at all.
It sounds like corporate fantasy, honestly.
I mean, it really does. But, today is Friday, May 8, 2026, and we're stepping into a market landscape that is currently dealing with just a massive case of cognitive dissonance.
Massive.
Because yesterday, Zoetis, which, I mean, let's be real, they are the undisputed heavyweight champion of the global animal health sector. They released their first quarter 2026 earnings report. And if you've been tracking the tape, you saw the market reaction.
Yeah, it's violent.
So violent. We're talking about a severe double-digit stock drop. It wiped out billions in market capitalization in a matter of hours.
Right. And, that reaction reflects a fundamental collision between two competing realities. Anyone analyzing Zoetis today is really forced to hold two seemingly contradictory ideas in their head at the exact same time.
Which is so hard to do.
It is. So the first reality is the undeniable presence of these severe compounding macroeconomic headwinds. I mean, they are actively battering physical veterinary clinics across the United States.
Yeah.
But the second reality is that Zoetis possesses this long-term structural advantage, right? A fortified product pipeline and an evolution in distribution that looks honestly, virtually bulletproof over a 5 to 10 year horizon.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I know that you, the listener, you're looking for clarity in what is just a staggering volume of complex earnings transcripts, 10K filings, and highly technical investor presentations that just hit the wire.
It's a lot of noise.
Ton of noise. So our mission for this deep dive is to execute a granular strategic inflection analysis of Zoetis. We need to unpack their transition into this highly anticipated next wave of blockbuster drugs. We need to decode a Q1 2026 guidance reset that, frankly, has a lot of analysts totally questioning their models today.
Oh, absolutely. The models are broken right now.
Exactly. And ultimately, we're going to determine if yesterday's massive sell-off exposes a permanent structural fracture in Zoetis' historical pricing power, or if we're simply looking at a temporary macroeconomic disruption masquerading as a systemic crisis.
Yeah, and to diagnose the severity of yesterday's numbers, we really cannot start with the top-line revenue miss. I mean, a top-line miss is merely a symptom.
Right, doesn't tell the whole story.
Exactly. To understand the pathology, we have to dissect the host. We need to map out the fundamental architecture of how Zoetis actually generates its revenue across the globe.
So let's unpack the empire.
Right.
I mean, we're looking at a business that generated $9.467 billion in global revenue in 2025.
Which is a towering figure for animal health. Just towering.
It's insane. And when we break down that $9.4 billion, the most immediate feature of the revenue architecture is the species diversification. It is effectively a 70-30 split.
Right. So approximately 70% of their total global revenue is generated by the companion animal segment. This encompasses, dogs, cats, and horses.
The pets.
The pets. And the underlying economic engine for this segment is deeply behavioral and demographic. It relies on the human-animal bond, the accelerating trend of pet humanization, and really just the biological reality that pets are living significantly longer.
Which is a good thing.
It's a great thing. But when a canine lifespan stretches from, say, 10 years to 15 years, the animal inevitably develops complex chronic diseases, osteoarthritis, various forms of cancer, chronic kidney failure.
Just like humans.
Exactly like humans. And pet owners in the modern era are demonstrating a real willingness to pay for human-level healthcare interventions to manage those chronic conditions.
Right. They're not just letting nature take its course anymore. They're treating the dog like a member of the family.
Exactly.
And then we have the remaining 30%. So roughly 29% to 30% of their revenue comes from the livestock segment, which covers cattle, swine, poultry, fish, and sheep. I assume the remaining 1% is just contract manufacturing and human health diagnostics?
Yeah, effectively a rounding error.
Right. But the 30% livestock piece operates on a completely different psychological wavelength than the companion animal side. I mean, a cattle rancher doesn't buy a vaccine because of an emotional bond with a single cow.
No. The livestock segment is purely a business-to-business operation. It's anchored entirely to essential agricultural economics. The demand drivers here are macroeconomic absolutes.
Like what?
Like global population growth. the expansion of the middle class in developing nations, and the resulting non-negotiable surge in demand for safe, scalable, high-quality animal protein.
So people need to eat.
Exactly.
No?
A producer invests in Zoetis products to maximize feed conversion ratios, prevent catastrophic herd loss from disease outbreaks, and ultimately protect their fundamental operating margins.
Okay, so the geography of this 70-30 split is where the foundation gets super interesting to me, because that global average doesn't apply evenly across different regions, does it?
Not at all. It's heavily skewed depending on where you look.
Right, like in the United States, which is their largest single market, accounting for about 54% of total revenue,
Sure.
the portfolio is overwhelmingly skewed toward the companion animal side. The U.S. mix is 83% companion animal and only 17% livestock.
Yes.
But internationally, which makes up the other 45% of total revenue, the business is much more balanced.
Yeah.
It's sitting at 56% companion animal and 44% livestock.
And that geographic disparity is a crucial piece of the puzzle when analyzing quarterly volatility. The international business, by virtue of carrying that 44% livestock weight, operates as this massive macroeconomic ballast.
Like a shock absorber.
Exactly. It's far more insulated against sudden shifts in consumer discretionary spending because a massive portion of its revenue is tethered to the absolute necessity of global food production.
So while that international ballast is fascinating, the 83% concentration of companion animal revenue in the U.S. is where the real disruption is happening.
Oh, absolutely.
The source material highlights a seismic behavioral shift in where U.S. consumers are actually procuring these medicines. Historically, the entire industry relied on a single point of sale, right? The physical veterinary clinic.
Right. You take the dog in for an exam, the vet writes a prescription, and you buy the box of pills directly from the front desk before you walk out the door.
Right, but Zoetis is actively dismantling that traditional choke point.
They are. They refer to this structural transition as their alternative channel thesis. Today, approximately 40% of all U.S. sales for their primary companion animal blockbusters, specifically Simparica Trio, which is their triple combination parasiticide, and Apoquel, their market-leading daily dermatology pill, are transacted through alternative retail and e-commerce platforms.
Wow, 40%.
Yes, we are talking about massive online pharmacies and big box pet retailers completely bypassing the physical clinic's inventory system.
Now, bypassing the clinic seems convenient for the owner, sure, but why is Zoetis so heavily incentivized to push consumers toward e-commerce? I mean, the drug costs the same, right? So it shouldn't matter to Zoetis where the transaction happens.
You would think so, but the data reveals a massive financial multiplier hidden inside this channel shift. And it all comes down to a concept called compliance.
Okay, compliance. Break that down for us.
Compliance simply measures whether the patient is actually receiving the medication on the required schedule. So with a monthly preventative like Simparica Trio, which protects against fleas, ticks, and heartworm, the prescribed compliance is 12 doses a year.
1 a month. Makes sense.
Right. However, when a pet owner relies on purchasing that medication over the counter at a physical veterinary clinic, the data shows that their average compliance is only 5 to 6 months out of the year.
Oh, wow. I mean, I can easily visualize how that happens. You go to the vet for the annual checkup in, say, April. You buy a 6-pack of the preventative and you give it to the dog through the summer.
Exactly. And then by October, the box is empty.
Right. And to get more, you have to call the vet, perhaps schedule another appointment, drive across town, find parking, and then you're waiting in a lobby filled with barking dogs just to buy another box of pills.
Right. The friction of the physical transaction is just so high that most people just tell themselves, the dog doesn't need flea medication in the winter, and they just stop buying it until the next spring.
Right. It's cold out, the ticks are dead, that whole logic.
Exactly. The physical clinic is a high-friction environment. However, when that identical pet owner is migrated to an alternative e-commerce channel, the entire behavioral dynamic changes.
How so?
These platforms heavily incentivize the consumer to enroll in an auto-ship or subscription home delivery program. The medication simply arrives on the doorstep every 4 weeks. When that psychological and physical friction is removed, compliance absolutely skyrockets.
From 5 or 6 months.
It jumps from 5 or 6 months of the year to 11 months of the year.
I look at this mechanic, and it strikes me as the holy grail of retail strategy. It is essentially a subscription box for your dog's health.
It really is.
By getting the owner onto an automated delivery schedule, Zoetis is effectively doubling its revenue per patient. They go from selling 5.5 pills a year to 11 pills a year. They don't have to spend a single additional dollar on marketing to acquire a new customer. They don't have to formulate a new chemical. They simply extract double the lifetime value from the exact same asset by changing the delivery mechanism.
And this creates an incredibly sticky, highly predictable, recurring revenue stream. Once a pet is integrated into an auto-ship system, the friction to cancel the subscription actually becomes higher than the friction to maintain the status quo.
That makes total sense. You have to log in, remember your password, find the cancel button.
Yeah.
Nobody does it.
Right. Furthermore, it completely neutralizes a lot of the short-term pricing tactics that competitors might deploy at the physical clinic level.
Oh, interesting. How does it neutralize pricing?
Well, when the consumer's standing at the vet's counter, they might ask if there's a cheaper generic available. But when the decision has already been automated online, that point-of-sale comparison shopping is eliminated entirely.
Out of sight, out of mind. Which brings us to a hyper-specific metric that management kept emphasizing during the earnings call and in their supplemental presentations. It's a phrase they seem utterly obsessed with: puppy share.
Yes.
If auto-ship is how they maximize the revenue of a patient, puppy share is how they guarantee they acquire that patient in the first place.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the puppy demographic is the most critical leading indicator for the future health of their parasiticide franchise. To understand why, we really have to look at the market penetration of Simparica Trio.
Okay.
So in the overall adult dog market, triple combination chews which combine flea, tick, and heartworm prevention into a single product make up about 45% to 50% of the total market volume.
Okay, so roughly half the adult dogs in the U.S. are on a triple combo. But when you filter the data to look exclusively at new puppy starts, the adoption curve accelerates dramatically, doesn't it?
Oh, massively. Among new puppies, these triple combos are capturing roughly 60% to 67% of all starts. They have rapidly become the undisputed default standard of care for a new dog.
Wow.
And within that massive expanding demographic, Simparica Trio alone is capturing about half of all those new puppies.
Meaning Simparica Trio is penetrating the puppy market at a significantly higher rate than it penetrates the adult dog market. But why does management care so much about isolating the puppy data? The adult dog market is vastly larger in total numbers. Why dedicate so much strategic focus to the absolute youngest cohort?
It is entirely rooted in the behavioral psychology of risk aversion. In the parasiticide market, brand loyalty is virtually permanent.
Really? Permanent?
Almost entirely. Consider the consumer's mindset when they bring an 8-week-old puppy home. The animal is vulnerable, the owner is highly anxious about its well-being, and the stakes feel incredibly high.
Yeah, you're terrified you're going to break the new puppy.
Exactly. So the veterinarian prescribes Simparica Trio. The owner administers the chewable tablet. The puppy remains free of parasites, and crucially, the puppy does not suffer an adverse biological reaction to the active pharmaceutical ingredients.
Right. The puppy doesn't develop a rash, it doesn't become lethargic, and it doesn't throw up on the living room rug.
Yes. Once that baseline of biological safety and efficacy is firmly established in the owner's mind, they are practically locked in for the duration of the animal's life.
Wow.
5 years down the road, if a competitor introduces a similar chew that costs $5 less per month, the owner is highly, highly unlikely to switch. The perceived risk of introducing a novel, untested chemical into their dog system and triggering a negative reaction vastly outweighs the minor financial savings.
That is fascinating.
By dominating the new puppy demographic today, Zoetis is not just making a single point-of-sale transaction. They are securing what management accurately terms a long tail of full-life treatments.
It functions exactly like an annuity. You acquire the patient at 8 weeks of age, you lock them into an auto-ship protocol, and you secure a 12 to 15-year recurring revenue stream that organically doubles in value compared to traditional clinic purchasing. I mean, this architecture is structurally magnificent. It has demographic tailwinds, it operates on a recurring revenue model, and it leverages behavioral psychology to build impenetrable brand loyalty.
The structural foundation is as strong as anything in the broader healthcare sector.
Which brings us to the massive, glaring contradiction that defined yesterday's market panic.
Right.
If the business model is so bulletproof and auto-ship is effortlessly doubling compliance, why did the Q1 2026 earnings report look like a total train wreck? Why did the stock take a double-digit dive if everything is operating so smoothly under the hood?
Because that beautifully engineered structural architecture collided violently with the brutal reality of the current macroeconomic environment. And that collision occurred precisely at the point where Zoetis remains most exposed, the physical veterinary clinic in the United States.
Okay, let's lay out the damage that spooked Wall Street. The headline that sent shockwaves through the market was a brutal contraction in their core engine. Zoetis' U.S. companion animal sales declined by 11% year-over-year.
11%. It's a huge number.
We are talking about an 11% contraction in their most profitable, most strategically vital segment. As a direct consequence of that contraction, management lowered their full-year 2026 revenue guidance. They pulled the range down to $9.68 billion to $9.96 billion, retreating from a previous midpoint that sat comfortably over the $10 billion mark. They also slashed their adjusted earnings per share guidance to a range of $6.85 to $7.
And to comprehend why a business with such formidable structural moats suffered an 11% contraction in its primary market, we have to analyze the convergence of three distinct severe headwinds that are simultaneously battering the physical veterinary clinic.
Let's hear them.
The first headwind is the elasticity of demand snapping under the weight of multi-year price increases. Over the last several years, veterinary clinics have steadily and aggressively raised their prices for basic services, exams, and procedures to cover their own rising labor and operational costs.
The cost of simply walking through the vet's door to get a baseline physical exam has become prohibitive for a significant portion of the middle class.
Exactly. The data reflects exactly that. Pet owners have simply begun visiting the clinic less frequently. Overall foot traffic is down.
Okay, less traffic. What's the second headwind?
The second headwind compounding this issue is acute consumer price sensitivity driven by the broader macroeconomic environment. Inflation has materially squeezed the discretionary income of the average consumer. Therefore, when a pet owner is forced to visit the vet for an issue, they are exhibiting much softer demand for the premium, highly innovative products where Zoetis historically commands the market.
So they're trading down.
Right. They are actively asking veterinarians for cheaper, generic alternatives to manage their personal budgets.
And the third headwind is the inevitable corporate response to that blood in the water. Competitors see this vulnerability. They see that clinic traffic is down and consumers are pinching pennies. So they launch aggressive, heavily discounted price wars. They are flooding the remaining clinic traffic with massive incentives, trying to buy shelf space and steal market share, while the consumer is hyper-focused on cost.
Yes, and the guidance reset is the most critical piece of communication from management regarding these headwinds. By explicitly lowering the full-year guidance in the first quarter, management is signaling to the market that they do not view this 11% contraction as a temporary, isolated anomaly.
They're bracing for impact.
They are acknowledging that this highly price-sensitive, highly competitive, lower-traffic clinic environment is the persistent, defining reality for the remainder of 2026.
But, the deeper we dig into the financial tables, the more complicated this narrative becomes.
Yeah.
Because when you read the official press release, Zoetis reported flat global organic operational growth, 0%.
Right.
Now, 0% isn't exactly a victory lap, but it hardly justifies a massive market panic. Furthermore, they reported a robust 10% growth in their international segment. If you just read the summary, it looks like the international livestock ballast worked perfectly, coming to the rescue and entirely offsetting the 11% U.S. decline.
But that 10% international growth figure is an absolute illusion.
Really, an illusion?
It is a mathematical artifact manufactured by a massive internal accounting adjustment.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's put on our forensic accounting hats, because the source material details an accounting maneuver called a Fiscal Year Alignment, or FIA. I need to understand exactly what this is, how it works mechanically, and how it managed to distort the global growth numbers so dramatically.
Well, the concept is relatively straightforward in theory. Historically, Zoetis operated with a one-month financial reporting lag for its international subsidiaries. Essentially, the accounting books for their international operations closed on a different date than their domestic U.S. books. Effective January 1st, 2026, management decided to eliminate that historical lag to align all of their global subsidiaries onto a standard unified December 31 year-end calendar.
From a corporate governance and long-term administrative standpoint, that makes perfect sense. You want the entire global empire operating on the exact same reporting calendar.
Sure.
But implementing that shift precisely in the first quarter created a massive wave of distortion, didn't it?
It did. The alignment created an estimated $100 million revenue shift. The international segment's Q1 revenue was artificially inflated by $100 million that functionally belonged to the economic activity of the previous year, but was mechanically pushed into the early months of 2026.
I am trying to visualize how a company practically executes this. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't just wave a wand and move $100 million across a calendar boundary.
No, you don't.
The sources break down 3 specific operational levers that management pulled to physically drag that revenue into the first quarter. Let's dissect the mechanics of these levers.
Okay. The first lever involved manipulating the timing of international price increases. In the pharmaceutical supply chain, when a manufacturer announces an impending price hike, massive international distributors will immediately execute heavy pre-buys.
Right. Load up while it's cheap.
Exactly. They will flood the manufacturer with massive inventory orders to lock in the lower rate before the hike takes effect. So, in anticipation of this accounting alignment, Zoetis intentionally altered the historical timing of those international price increases. They moved the effective dates so that the inevitable massive wave of distributor pre-buying landed squarely in early 2026 rather than late 2025.
Wow. So they fundamentally understood the behavioral economics of their distributors. They dangled a massive financial incentive just across the new year finish line, knowing the distributors would aggressively pull their capital into Q1 to secure the discount. That is a highly engineered lever.
It really is.
If they manipulated pricing timing on one end, I imagine they had to manipulate the physical logistics on the other end. Were they actually withholding shipments?
That is exactly the second lever. To accommodate the transition of the physical IT and accounting systems to the new unified calendar, Zoetis deliberately held back the processing of certain customer orders that were placed during late December 2025.
So the orders were in.
The economic demand existed in 2025, the orders were received in 2025, but the company intentionally delayed processing and booking those physical sales until January of 2026.
And the third lever is simply the baseline mathematics of year-over-year comparisons. By artificially inflating Q1 2026 with delayed orders and pre-bought inventory, they were comparing a bloated quarter against a historically softer Q4 2025 and a much stronger Q4 2024. But let's strip away the accounting maneuvers and look at the actual operational verdict, because when you remove that $100 million shift, the picture darkens significantly.
It does. If you extract that manufactured $100 million FIA benefit from the ledger, the international segment did not grow by 10%. Operationally, it was entirely flat at 0% growth. Zero. And far more concerning for the overall valuation, the global business did not report flat growth. Without the protection of that $100 million shift, Zoetis' overall global enterprise actually suffered a 5% organic operational decline in the first quarter.
Okay, I have to push back here, because this feels incredibly convenient for a management team facing a brutal domestic contraction. I mean, I know the alignment was planned, but let's be real. Management modeled this out. They knew exactly what pulling those levers would do to the Q1 headline number.
Of course they did.
Is Wall Street punishing the stock so violently because they view this as genuinely shady accounting? Are they selling off because it feels like management used a calendar shift to intentionally obscure a massive fundamental decline?
It is crucial to distinguish between illicit accounting and opportunistic optics.
Okay, fair.
The maneuver is completely legal, highly regulated, and structurally transparent. Management explicitly disclosed the $100 million figure in the primary text of their press release and walked analysts through the exact mechanical levers driving it during the earnings call. They did not attempt to hide the math.
Why?
But however, the operational orchestration required to execute it, the deliberate delay of physical orders, and the strategic moving of price hike dates effectively provided a temporary cosmetic shield. If a retail investor or a headline scanning algorithm only looked at the top-line summary, they saw 0% global growth.
Right, you had to dig for the bad news.
You had to manually reconcile the supplemental materials to realize the underlying business actually contracted by 5%. The market sell-off is a reaction to that underlying 5% contraction being exposed, combined with the frustration that the headline numbers required so much forensic adjustment to reveal the true operational run rate.
So it temporarily masked the severity of the bleeding. And to understand exactly where Zoetis is bleeding the most, and to analyze how they intend to stop the hemorrhage, we have to look at the absolute bloodiest competitive arena in the entire animal health sector right now.
The dermatology franchise.
Yes.
The dermatology portfolio is an absolute behemoth. It is a $1.7 billion franchise for Zoetis, and it functions as the crown jewel of their companion animal business. This massive revenue stream is driven primarily by 2 blockbuster products targeting allergic dermatitis or chronic itch in dogs.
Right.
You have Apoquel, which is an oral daily pill, and Cytopoint, which is an injectable therapy administered by a veterinarian.
And this franchise is the exact epicenter where the macroeconomic headwinds of lower clinic traffic and the intense new competitor price wars collided head-on. The numbers in the U.S. are just stark. U.S. key dermatology revenue dropped by a painful 13% in the quarter, falling to $215 million.
A huge hit.
And this drop is not a mystery. It is a direct result of Merck aggressively entering the space with a new competitor drug called Numelvi. Before we get into Merck's pricing attack, what exactly is Numelvi biologically? The sources refer to it as an IL-31 inhibitor that competes with Zoetis' JAK inhibitors. What are these acronyms, and what is actually happening at the cellular level when a dog gets itchy?
Well, to understand the battleground, you have to understand the biological mechanism of an itch. When a dog encounters an allergen, say, pollen or a flea bite, their immune system overreacts and releases various signaling proteins.
Okay.
One of the most critical proteins in triggering the sensation of an itch is called interleukin-31 or IL-31. This protein travels to the nerve endings in the skin, binds to a specific receptor, and sends a signal up the nervous system to the brain that says, I am itchy, you need to scratch.
So IL-31 is the messenger carrying the itch signal.
Precisely. Now, Zoetis' daily pill, Apoquel, is a JAK inhibitor. JK, or Janus kinase, is an enzyme inside the cell that helps transmit that itch signal after the IL-31 protein binds to the receptor.
Ah, so it stops it further down the line.
Right. Apoquel blocks that internal cellular transmission. Merck's new drug, Numelvi, is an IL-31 inhibitor. It operates slightly differently by targeting the IL-31 protein itself, preventing it from ever binding to the nerve receptor in the first place.
Got it.
Both drugs ultimately achieve the same clinical outcome. They intercept the biological signal before the brain registers the urge to scratch.
So Merck has developed a scientifically valid, highly effective alternative to block the itch. And they, along with other generic competitors entering the space, are not playing a gentle game of coexistence.
Not at all.
They launched an aggressive, purely price-driven attack on Zoetis' market share.
And the intensity of this price war represents a paradigm shift for the industry. Historically, when a major pharmaceutical company introduced a massive new innovative product into a category, it was actually beneficial for the incumbent. The new entrant would deploy millions of dollars in marketing, which raised overall consumer awareness of the underlying disease state. This rising tide would lift all boats, expanding the total addressable market so rapidly that both the incumbent and the new challenger could grow their revenues simultaneously.
But because we are in a macroeconomic environment where overall veterinary clinic foot traffic is fundamentally down, that historical expansion just isn't happening. The pie is no longer growing.
Exactly. The environment has contracted into a brutal zero-sum game. For Merck to gain a patient for Numelvi, they have to steal that exact patient directly away from Zoetis' Apoquel.
Hand-to-hand combat.
Yes. To execute that theft, they are utilizing significantly lower list prices and extended aggressive promotional discounts to effectively bribe clinics into reallocating their limited shelf space.
So how does Zoetis fight back? Because engaging in a race to the bottom on price is corporate suicide. If you slash the price of Apoquel to match Merck, you permanently destroy your long-term margin profile.
Zoetis recognizes that a price war is a race to the bottom. Instead of cutting prices, they are defending their territory by leveraging what management calls their technical moats.
Technical moats.
Yes. They are relying heavily on formulation science to prove that their product is operationally superior for the end user, justifying the premium price.
Let's unpack the mechanics of this formulation defense, specifically the film coating, because this detail was absolutely fascinating. As an outsider, you assume a pill is just a pill. But in veterinary medicine, the physical manufacturing of the tablet is a massive competitive differentiator.
Management repeatedly emphasized to analysts that Apoquel features a highly engineered proprietary film-coated tablet. This sounds like an irrelevant manufacturing detail until you understand the biology of the active pharmaceutical ingredients involved in dermatology drugs.
Right.
The raw chemical compounds that inhibit these itch pathways are evolutionarily incredibly bitter. If you place the raw chemical on a canine's tongue, their taste receptors will immediately register it as a toxin and they will forcefully reject it.
Anyone who has ever tried to force a bitter pill down a dog's throat knows exactly what a nightmare this is. You try to hide the pill inside a piece of cheese or a scoop of peanut butter. The dog happily eats the cheese, meticulously separates the pill in its mouth, and spits the medication onto the kitchen floor.
Exactly. It's so frustrating.
It creates massive daily friction for the owner, which ultimately destroys compliance.
Because the competitor pills, including Merck's Numelvi, lack this sophisticated film coating, they have to be manufactured as much larger uncoated tablets. The administration instructions explicitly mandate that the pill must be hidden in food or administered with a treat to mask the severe bitterness.
Wow, they literally mandate it.
They do, but Abacal's specialized film coating completely encapsulates the bitter active ingredient in a microscopic polymer barrier. The pill does not begin to dissolve until it passes the taste receptors and enters the acidic environment of the stomach.
That is brilliant.
This allows Zoetis to manufacture a much smaller pill that can be administered cleanly, giving them a massive compliance edge over the cheaper alternatives.
And Zoetis pushed that formulation advantage even further by launching Apoquel Chewable, which is formulated as a bee-flavored treat. Currently, they face zero direct chewable competition from these new entrants.
None.
The chewable format completely neutralizes the friction of administration. The dog views the medication as a reward, and compliance goes through the roof. So they are defending the zero-sum turf with superior delivery mechanisms. But Zoetis is not a company that survives by merely playing defense.
Definitely not.
They are preparing a massive offensive maneuver designed to completely alter the structural dynamics of the battlefield. Management refers to it as the leapfrog catalyst.
Yes, the leapfrog catalyst centers entirely on the anticipated regulatory approval from the USDA for long-acting Cytopoint, which is targeted for the second half of 2026.
So Cytopoint is their existing injectable therapy. It's a monoclonal antibody administered by a veterinarian, and it typically provides itch relief for about 4 to 8 weeks. What is the biological and strategic difference with long-acting Cytopoint?
Long-acting Cytopoint utilizes advanced biologic engineering to push the duration of efficacy out to an unprecedented 2.5 to 3 months with a single injection.
That is an absolute paradigm shift. If we connect this technological leap back to the macroeconomic headwinds we discussed earlier, the reality that owners simply do not want to pay a $75 clinic exam fee every single month just to get their dog a shot for itchy skin. A 3-month injectable completely alters the economic calculus.
It does.
It entirely removes the physical friction of the monthly clinic visit.
Yeah.
You're asking the consumer to visit the vet 4 times a year instead of 12.
It allows Zoetis to literally leapfrog over the entire daily pill battleground and bypass the limitations of their own monthly injectables. By offering a 3-month solution, they render the competitors' daily pill pricing strategies largely irrelevant because they are selling a completely different magnitude of convenience. But the true strategic value of long-acting Cytopoint extends far beyond simply retaining their current market share. The ultimate objective is to utilize this extreme convenience to unlock a massive, entirely untapped demographic.
The undertreated population. Let's look at the numbers presented in the source material because they highlight a staggering opportunity. Zoetis currently treats about 12 million dogs globally for dermatological issues across their Apoquel and Cytopoint portfolios.
Right.
But management pointed out that there are roughly 20 million medicalized dogs worldwide, meaning dogs that regularly interact with a veterinarian that suffer from allergic itch but remain entirely untreated, or they are just being temporarily managed with cheap generic steroids that carry terrible long-term side effects like liver damage and immune suppression.
That represents 20 million dogs sitting squarely in the white space of the market. These are often owned by highly busy individuals who simply cannot commit to the friction of administering a daily pill or scheduling a vet visit every 4 weeks.
I just don't have the time.
Right. A safe, highly effective 3-month injectable is the exact type of low-friction, high-convenience therapy required to convert those dormant, busy pet owners into active consumers. It is the key to unlocking organic market expansion even within a broadly contracted macroeconomic environment.
The overarching strategy is brilliant. Defend the daily pill market against generic pricing attacks, utilizing advanced film coating and beef chews, and simultaneously monopolize the premium convenience market with a 3-month injection to capture the untreated white space.
It's a very strong two-pronged approach.
And dermatology isn't the only medical franchise where Zoetis is leveraging the mechanics of long-acting injectables to fundamentally change the game. This strategy of moving from daily interventions to long-duration biologicals is also being deployed in their osteoarthritis, or OA, pain management portfolio.
Yes. Osteoarthritis pain is another massive chronic condition directly linked to the expanding longevity of the pet population. Zoetis essentially created the modern market for this condition with the launch of Librela for dogs and Silencia for cats.
And these were revolutionary because they were the first ever monoclonal antibody therapies approved for monthly pain alleviation in animals.
Correct.
Before we analyze the financials on this, we really need to clarify what a monoclonal antibody, or mAb, actually is and why it is superior to a traditional chemical painkiller like an NSAA.
Well, a traditional chemical pill, like a nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drug or NSAID, is a small molecule. When administered, it floods the entire biological system, suppressing inflammation globally, which can inadvertently cause severe collateral damage to the kidneys, liver, and gastrointestinal tract over long-term use.
It's a blunt instrument.
Very blunt. A monoclonal antibody is a massive, highly complex biological protein engineered in a laboratory to perform one highly specific task. In the case of Librela, the mAb is designed to seek out and bind exclusively to a specific protein called nerve growth factor, or NGF, which is the primary signaling molecule responsible for transmitting joint pain.
So it targets just the pain.
The mAb neutralizes the pain signal at the source without flooding the animal's internal organs with toxic chemicals.
It operates like a biological guided missile, whereas a traditional pill operates like a systemic biochemical blanket.
Exactly.
Despite this incredible technological advantage, the Q1 financial numbers for Librela in the U.S. looked pretty grim at first glance. The U.S. revenue saw a harsh 22% year-over-year decline, dropping down to $37 million for the quarter.
However, context is absolutely critical when evaluating that decline. While the year-over-year comparison is undeniably steep, management highlighted a vital operational green shoot. U.S. Librela revenue stabilized and actually increased sequentially for the first time in 6 quarters.
Meaning, the revenue in Q1 2026 was actively higher than the revenue in Q4 2025. The bleeding has stopped, and the trajectory is pointing upward again.
Precisely. And this stabilization was not a passive occurrence. When Librela first launched in the U.S., it faced significant pushback and hesitation within the general veterinary community regarding its safety profile and the appropriate use cases, particularly when treating highly complex geriatric dogs suffering from multiple compounding diseases.
Vets were scared of it.
They were hesitant. To counter this hesitation, Zoetis executed an incredibly aggressive, multi-pronged medical education campaign. They shifted their marketing focus away from the consumer and directed massive resources toward building prescribing confidence directly within the veterinary community.
They didn't just rely on marketing rhetoric, they weaponized independent real-world data. The sources specifically point to a massive safety report published by the UK's Veterinary Medicines Directorate, or VMD, which evaluated over 34 million global doses.
34 million is a massive sample size.
It is. And the VMD thoroughly confirmed Librela's overwhelmingly positive benefit-risk profile. Zoetis took that independent European safety data and aggressively deployed it to educate and reassure hesitant veterinarians across the United States.
And this grueling education process provided Zoetis with vital learnings regarding the friction of introducing novel, complex biologic therapies into the standard veterinary market. They are taking the painful lessons learned from the broad Librela rollout and immediately applying them to the launch of their next-generation products.
Because, just like in the dermatology portfolio, they are actively transitioning the OA pain market from a 1-month therapy to a 3-month therapy.
Right.
They recently secured regulatory approvals in the European Union and Canada for their next-generation 3-month OA injectables, Lenivia for dogs and Portela for cats. But based on the friction they experienced with Librela, they are executing a completely different go-to-market strategy. They are rolling out Lenivia and Portela using a specialist-first launch protocol.
Yes.
Why shift the strategy? Why not just blast these new 3-month injectables out to every general practitioner clinic in Europe to maximize immediate revenue?
Because a 3-month injectable monoclonal antibody is a highly powerful, long-duration medical intervention. The biological reality of a long-acting injectable is that once you administer the dose, you cannot extract it.
Right, there's no antidote.
It remains active in the animal system for 90 days. If a general practitioner misdiagnoses the root cause of the dog's mobility issues or administers the biologic to a dog suffering from severe underlying confounding conditions, and the dog experiences a negative reaction, that drug cannot be flushed from the system.
That sounds incredibly stressful for a vet.
It creates a terrifying 90-day negative feedback loop that permanently damages the reputation of the brand.
That makes perfect sense. The duration is the primary selling point, but it's also the primary clinical risk.
By focusing the initial launch exclusively on veterinary specialists, The board-certified orthopedic surgeons, the advanced pain management experts, and the neurologists Zoetis ensures that the complex risk-benefit profile, the ideal patient selection criteria, and the appropriate use cases are deeply rigorously established by the industry's key opinion leaders.
They let the experts figure it out.
They are allowing the experts to stress test the drug in the real world before it trickles down to broad adoption by general practice veterinarians.
It is a highly disciplined, controlled burn. You let the absolute best medical minds in the field write the practical rulebook on how to use the drug safely and effectively, and then you distribute that proven rulebook to the thousands of general practitioners. It prioritizes long-term franchise stability and clinical safety over a quick, chaotic initial revenue spike.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have spent a significant amount of time deep in the trenches of the companion animal business. We have analyzed the 11% U.S. revenue decline, the intense zero-sum price wars in dermatology against Merck, and the arduous stabilization of the OA pain portfolio.
You covered a lot of ground.
We have. But here is the most incredible, counterintuitive aspect of this entire earnings report. Despite the massive U.S. companion animal business taking heavy, sustained damage from macroeconomic headwinds, the overall Zoetis enterprise did not collapse. They still managed to protect their bottom line. The reason they survived the quarter intact is because the other half of the company operates in a completely different macroeconomic universe.
This is where we must examine the livestock segment, which management accurately refers to as the diversified shield.
The financial contrast between the two halves of the company is absolutely stark. While the U.S. companion animal segment dropped 11%, the global livestock segment delivered a massive, robust 12% organic operational growth, generating $720 million in revenue for the quarter.
It's incredible.
It is a completely divergent economic reality operating within the same corporate structure.
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanics of that divergence. It highlights the brilliant strategic resilience of maintaining a globally balanced cross-species portfolio. As we discussed, companion animal spending, particularly for premium preventative treatments, long-acting biologics, or routine wellness exams, is ultimately a highly discretionary consumer expense. When inflation spikes, grocery bills rise, and gas prices surge, an average pet owner might rationally decide to delay an annual vet visit, stretch a monthly flea medication out to 6 weeks, or ask the vet to switch them to a cheaper generic daily pill. The elasticity of demand in the companion animal space is very real and highly sensitive to consumer sentiment.
But the livestock segment isn't governed by consumer sentiment or discretionary retail budgets. A massive commercial rancher doesn't wake up, look at a dip in the stock market, feel pessimistic about the economy, and arbitrarily decide to skip vaccinating a herd of 10,000 cattle against a deadly respiratory virus.
Exactly. The livestock segment is anchored to the cold, rational mathematics of agricultural production. It operates strictly as a business-to-business enterprise. The primary driver of livestock health spending is producer economics.
Meaning how much money the rancher makes.
Right. Currently, the producer economics in the beef cattle industry are highly favorable, meaning ranchers are securing strong market prices for their beef. When profitability is high, producers are highly incentivized to invest aggressively in the health, weight gain, and overall productivity of their herds to maximize their ultimate yield at slaughter.
Make hay while the sun shines.
Exactly. Furthermore, a massive portion of livestock spending is dictated by disease outbreak prevention. The financial report specifically highlighted increased sales of poultry vaccines that were tied directly to regional disease outbreaks. These are entirely non-discretionary expenses.
Because if they don't buy the vaccine,
A rampant viral outbreak in a commercial poultry facility can mandate the culling of millions of birds, instantly bankrupting the producer. The cost of the Zoetis vaccine is an infinitesimal insurance premium compared to the catastrophic risk of an unprotected flock.
the livestock business functions as a massive, heavy macroeconomic ballast that stabilizes the entire Zoetis ship, preventing it from capsizing when the consumer discretionary winds start blowing violently against the pet sector. It is the sole reason the total company was able to report that flat overall performance instead of suffering a catastrophic total revenue decline.
It really saved the quarter.
But the source material reveals that the livestock segment isn't just a legacy, slow-growth anchor relying on basic vaccines. It is undergoing a massive high-tech evolution.
Yes, the technological sophistication of agricultural medicine is advancing rapidly, specifically in the highly complex realm of precision genomics.
The sources prominently highlighted Zoetis' agreement to acquire and integrate Neogen's animal genomics business. On the surface, it seems odd. Why is a traditional pharmaceutical company that makes its money selling vaccines and antibiotics buying a specialized genetics and DNA testing company?
Because it represents a fundamental structural shift in agricultural economics from reactive medical treatment to proactive predictive disease prevention.
Okay, break that down.
By integrating Neogen's advanced genetic testing capabilities into their portfolio, Zoetis is no longer just selling a chemical solution to a sick animal. They are providing commercial producers with the raw data required to selectively breed animals that possess natural genetic resistance to specific costly diseases, or animals that are genetically predisposed to convert feed into lean muscle mass more efficiently.
Wow, they're optimizing the animal at the DNA level.
Right. Zoetis is moving aggressively up the value chain. They are evolving from a pharmaceutical vendor into an essential data partner, engineering a healthier, highly optimized, and vastly more profitable herd from the moment of birth.
It is the ultimate ecosystem play. They secure the relationship with the producer at the genetic level before the animal is even born, and they maintain that relationship through vaccines and diagnostics throughout the animal's life cycle. And there is a massive, highly unexpected macroeconomic tailwind actively accelerating this global demand for optimized livestock. Management mentioned a concept during the earnings call that absolutely blew my mind. They cited the GLP-1 effect.
Oh, this is fascinating. The integration of the GLP-1 effect into an animal health thesis is a brilliant demonstration of how interconnected global health trends truly are. GLP-1 receptor agonists are the massively popular, highly effective human weight loss drugs, pharmaceuticals like Ozempic and Wegovy.
Right. They fundamentally alter human endocrinology, suppressing appetite, slowing gastric emptying, causing people to consume significantly fewer calories, and resulting in massive weight loss. But how on earth does a human weight loss trend physically benefit a company selling vaccines and genetic testing to cattle ranchers and poultry farmers?
The connection lies in the secondary dietary effects of GLP-1 administration. While human patients on these drugs are consuming far fewer total calories, clinical guidance from endocrinologists strongly mandates that they must significantly increase their dietary proportion of lean protein.
Oh, because of the muscle loss.
Yes. Rapid weight loss often results in dangerous muscle mass depletion alongside fat loss. To counteract this, patients are instructed to consume highly concentrated, high-quality animal proteins. This medical directive is causing a massive structural shift in human dietary consumption patterns globally, driving a massive surge in demand for lean beef, poultry, and fish.
That is an incredible cascade of biological and economic events. A human injects a weight loss drug, which changes their appetite, which forces them to buy more chicken and fish at the grocery store, which drives up global agricultural demand.
As that global demand for lean protein surges, the operational profitability of the commercial producers rises in tandem. And as those producers become more profitable, they reinvest that capital directly into Zoetis' advanced vaccines, diagnostics, and precision genomics to safely and efficiently maximize their output to meet the surging human demand.
So they're riding the coattails of Ozempic.
It is a massive, structural, multi-year tailwind that directly and organically benefits Zoetis' underlying livestock baseline.
The absolute interconnectedness of the global biochemical economy is just stunning.
Okay, so we have established that the livestock shield is holding the line today, utilizing favorable producer economics and the bizarre GLP-1 tailwind to protect the broader company from the extreme consumer volatility in the companion animal sector.
Correct.
But Zoetis management understands they cannot simply hide behind cattle vaccines and genomic testing forever. To escape the brutal, zero-sum, margin-crushing price wars currently happening at the physical veterinary clinic level, they have to literally invent their way out. They have to change the technological parameters of veterinary medicine entirely. And that brings us to their highly touted next wave pipeline and a concept they call their science-to-scale inflection.
At its absolute core, Zoetis is not just a distribution company, it is an incredibly powerful research and development engine. And their science-to-scale operational model is unique because it leverages a profound structural advantage that human pharmaceutical giants simply cannot replicate. Let's break down the mechanics of that structural advantage. Why is an animal pharmaceutical company so much more efficient and better positioned for rapid innovation than a human pharmaceutical company with a vastly larger budget?
The advantage is entirely rooted in the biology of the clinical trial process. When a massive human pharma company like a Pfizer or a Merck develops a novel human therapeutic, they are subjected to a grueling, highly inefficient pipeline.
Years of testing.
Right. They must first test the compound in mice, then potentially in primates, attempting to extrapolate those biological results to humans. Finally, they must execute massive, highly regulated, decade-long Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 human clinical trials.
And most of them fail.
The scientific failure rate as the drug moves across species is astronomical, and the sunk costs routinely run into the billions of dollars for a single failed molecule. However, when Zoetis develops a novel therapeutic for dogs, the initial target species is the final trial species. They can move directly into canine biological trials exponentially earlier in the development process, bypassing the massive translational errors that plague human research.
Which collapses both the developmental timeline and the financial burn rate.
Drastically. Because they are testing directly on the target species from the early stages, their R&D cycle times are less than half as long as human pharmaceutical development. Their clinical success rates are approximately 4 times higher. And crucially, their financial costs are 20 to 30 times lower than human drug development.
20 to 30 times lower. That represents an insane capital efficiency advantage. They can take dozens of shots on goal for the cost of a single human trial. And the source material highlights that they are actively supercharging this already efficient process with the integration of artificial intelligence.
Right.
How exactly are they deploying AI? Are they just using it to discover new molecules?
While AI is utilized for biological target identification and molecule selection, management explicitly noted that they are deploying AI to optimize and dramatically accelerate the preparation of their regulatory dossier.
Explain the mechanics of a regulatory dossier. Why is that a bottleneck that requires AI intervention?
When a company submits a drug for approval to the FDA or the USDA, they do not just send a summary report.
Yeah.
A regulatory dossier is a staggering compilation of tens of thousands of pages encompassing complex toxicology reports, vast tables of raw clinical efficacy data, and meticulous manufacturing safety protocols.
This is like a nightmare.
Historically, formatting, cross-referencing, and manually compiling these massive documents to meet the exact, rigid specifications of the regulatory bodies was a grueling clerical nightmare that could take teams of highly paid scientists 6 to 9 months to complete.
Wow.
Zoetis is deploying large language models and specialized AI to parse the raw clinical data, automatically format it into the strict regulatory templates, and instantly flag inconsistencies. They're utilizing AI to compress a 6-month administrative bottleneck into a process that takes weeks, radically accelerating the timeline from clinical success in the lab to commercial launch in the market.
And this rapid, highly efficient, AI-supercharged R&D engine is the foundation fueling what management calls their $5 billion next wave pipeline. Looking toward the future, management is projecting over $7 billion in total additional market opportunity over the next decade.
It's an aggressive forecast.
They aren't just making incrementally better flea pills, they're preparing to open up entirely new frontiers in complex veterinary medicine. Let's examine the most massive target on their radar: chronic kidney disease, or CKD.
Chronic kidney disease is universally recognized by the veterinary community as the single largest unmet medical need in companion animal health today, particularly devastating for the aging feline and canine populations.
Right.
Currently, when a pet is clinically diagnosed with CKD, it is essentially a slow, agonizing death sentence. The current standard of care offers absolutely no cure. Veterinarians can only attempt palliation, managing the inevitable decline through highly specialized, unpalatable diets and the burdensome administration of subcutaneous fluids by the owner.
It's terrible. I've known people who have had to give their cats fluids every day.
Yeah.
But Zoetis is targeting a massive 2027 regulatory approval for a novel canine renal monoclonal antibody therapy.
Oh.
How does this therapy actually work? How do they plan to reverse a death sentence?
The clinical rationale behind their CKD strategy is absolutely fascinating because it relies entirely on the seamless integration of their advanced diagnostic business with their therapeutic pipeline.
Okay, diagnostics plus therapeutics.
Yes. The biology of the kidney is unforgiving. Kidneys are comprised of microscopic filtration units called nephrons. Once a nephron is damaged and scars over, it cannot regenerate. Historically, veterinarians relied on traditional blood markers, specifically BUN and creatinine, to diagnose kidney failure.
Right, the standard blood panel.
The fatal flaw with BUN and creatinine is that they are extreme lagging indicators. They typically only show abnormal spikes in the blood after roughly 70% of the kidney's nephrons have already been irreversibly destroyed. By the time the traditional test catches the disease, the organ is already failing.
So the traditional diagnosis is essentially an autopsy of a living organ.
Yeah.
You were finding out about the fire after the house is burned down.
Precisely. Zoetis is combating this by developing highly sensitive proprietary diagnostic biomarkers that can detect microscopic cellular injury in the kidney extremely early in the disease process, long before BUN and creatinine levels ever rise.
So they spot the molecular smoke before the fire spreads.
Exactly. Once the advanced diagnostic detects that early cellular injury, the veterinarian immediately deploys the targeted renal MAB therapy. This monoclonal antibody is engineered to intervene at the cellular level, neutralizing the specific inflammatory pathways driving the damage, effectively halting the progression of the disease before irreversible scarring and massive nephron death occurs.
It fundamentally changes chronic kidney disease from a terminal rapid decline into a manageable long-term chronic condition. It preserves the organ rather than just managing the failure.
It's revolutionary.
And they aren't stopping their biologic ambitions at the kidneys. What are the major pipeline targets moving toward the end of the decade?
Looking toward the 2028 and 2029 horizons, Zoetis is targeting the regulatory approval of massive oncology MABs, specifically focusing on revolutionizing the treatment of canine lymphoma and melanoma. And looking even further out toward 2030 and beyond, they are targeting entirely novel biological cardiology therapies for advanced heart failure.
This raises a massive logistical and economic question. Treating systemic cancer and managing advanced heart failure in pets?
Oh.
Historically, those interventions require the owner to transfer the animal to a massive, highly expensive specialty veterinary hospital equipped with specialized oncologists and cardiologists.
Right.
If Zoetis is developing these incredibly complex therapies, how do they plan to monetize them on a massive global scale if the distribution is limited to a handful of elite specialty clinics?
That limitation is exactly what the Next Wave pipeline is designed to obliterate. The core strategic objective of this multi-billion-dollar R&D investment is to aggressively democratize specialty care.
Democratize it.
Yes. Zoetis' ultimate goal is to take these highly advanced, complex biologic treatments that were previously restricted entirely to the realm of board-certified veterinary oncologists and cardiologists and formulate them to be safe, convenient, and foolproof enough for a standard, local general practitioner to administer during a routine 15-minute clinic visit.
They are attempting to turn the local neighborhood veterinarian into a highly capable oncologist and cardiologist. If they can successfully execute that transition, the total addressable market expands exponentially. They are no longer just selling to the top 5% of wealthy pet owners who can afford a referral to a specialty hospital. The total addressable market becomes every single medicalized dog and cat across the globe.
Exactly. That is the fundamental mechanism required to unlock a $7 billion market opportunity. You must entirely remove the geographical and financial bottleneck of the medical specialist.
Okay, we have systematically put all the massive, complex pieces on the board. We have analyzed the severe Q1 guidance reset and the 11% domestic contraction. We've forensically deconstructed the $100 million FIA accounting adjustment and exposed the underlying 5% global operational decline.
We covered the dermatology wars.
Yes, we dissected the brutal zero-sum price wars in the dermatology sector against Merck and detailed the formulation defense of film-coated pills. But we've also mapped out the massive 12% global livestock shield, the clinical stabilization of the liberal OA pain portfolio, the brilliant financial multiplier of the auto-ship compliance model, and this staggering AI-fueled $5 billion biologic pipeline targeting kidney disease and cancer.
It's a massive, massive story.
So it is time to deliver the final verdict. What does this massive compilation of data mean for the listener who is actively tracking this company, managing a healthcare portfolio, or analyzing the fundamental shifts in the global animal health sector? Does the recent 13% violent stock drop and the Q1 guidance reset expose a permanent fracture in Zoetis' historically bulletproof pricing power and structural dominance? Or are we simply looking at a temporary, highly visible macroeconomic blip?
Well, to synthesize a final verdict, we must rigorously respect the painful realities of the present while accurately mapping the structural trajectory of the future. The macroeconomic headwinds are absolutely real and currently inflicting deep operational pain. The intense pet owner price sensitivity is real.
The consumer is stretched thin.
Very thin. The zero-sum environment within the physical veterinary clinic where generic competitors are fighting tooth and nail, utilizing massive discounts to capture shrinking foot traffic, will absolutely persist unabated through the entirety of 2026. Management explicitly acknowledged this harsh reality by lowering their revenue guidance and immediately initiating a comprehensive, aggressive cost and productivity program.
Right.
They are actively tightening their discretionary corporate spending and ruthlessly optimizing their global procurement supply chains to ensure they still deliver bottom-line margin leverage, holding firm to a targeted adjusted net income of $2.87 billion to $2.95 billion, even while operating in a severely constrained top-line revenue environment.
They are intelligently pulling the internal operational levers to protect the margin profile while the macroeconomic storm passes overhead.
Yes. However, if you look beneath the short-term noise and the intense friction occurring at the physical clinic level, the fundamental structural moats of the enterprise remain entirely intact and arguably stronger than ever.
How so?
The technical superiority of Apoquel's film coating and beef chewable format successfully defends their premium positioning against cheap generic switching. Simparica Trio's absolute dominance in capturing up to 67% of the new puppy market guarantees a highly predictable, decade-long recurring revenue stream built on impenetrable behavioral loyalty.
And the livestock shield.
Exactly. The massive global livestock segment continues to act as a powerful 12% growth agricultural hedge, deeply insulated from consumer volatility by the essential economics of global protein demand.
And crucially, the temporary blip represented by the 11% decline in U.S. companion animal sales is not indicative of a fundamental collapse in the overall demand for pet health care. People have not stopped loving their dogs and cats. The fundamental issue is a physical bottleneck at the traditional point of sale.
Right.
The physical veterinary clinic itself had simply become too expensive, too time-consuming, and too inconvenient for the modern, inflation-pressured consumer to utilize for routine maintenance.
Exactly. And the long-term thesis rests on the fact that Zoetis is actively, aggressively bypassing that physical bottleneck on multiple fronts. By successfully shifting 40% of their key product distribution to alternative digital channels and locking consumers into automated subscription models, they are doubling patient compliance and extracting massive same-store sales growth without relying on the clinic.
It's brilliant.
Furthermore, by aggressively transitioning their therapeutic portfolio away from daily pills and monthly clinic shots toward 3-month, long-acting biological injectables, they are entirely removing the logistical friction of the clinic visit, opening the door to capture the 20 million untreated, busy owner pets sitting dormant in the market white space.
It is an absolute masterclass in adapting distribution networks and leveraging advanced biological formulation to solve a purely macroeconomic bottleneck. So to our listener, why is this incredibly granular deep dive matter to you?
It matters for a lot of reasons.
Whether you are tracking the ongoing evolution of consumer discretionary spending under inflationary pressure, analyzing the profound integration of AI into pharmaceutical R&D timelines, or modeling the vast interconnectedness of global agricultural economics and human health trends, Zoetis stands as the ultimate multifaceted bellwether. Their Q1 2026 earnings report is a perfect, highly complex microcosm, demonstrating how a dominant, market-leading incumbent navigates a sudden, violent collision in inflation, aggressive new generic competition, and rapidly shifting consumer behavior. They aren't trying to win a race to the bottom price war. They are utilizing advanced formulation science, digital distribution channels, and massive global cross-species diversification to entirely rewrite the rules of engagement.
And as we look past the current turbulence toward the 2027 horizon and the massive potential of the next wave pipeline, the data leaves us with a profound, almost philosophical question regarding the ultimate trajectory of this entire industry.
I love this part.
As Zoetis successfully pioneers these highly advanced, incredibly complex monoclonal antibodies to manage chronic kidney failure, and as they prepare to democratize localized oncology and advance cardiology treatments down to the general practice level, we are witnessing the absolute total medicalization of the pet. Through massive biological engineering, we are actively forcing the lifespans of dogs and cats to mirror the longevity curves of human beings.
We're systematically allowing them to survive long enough to develop highly complex human diseases, and we are treating them with human-grade, biologically engineered science.
But as these pets live significantly longer, relying on an escalating regimen of highly sophisticated, incredibly expensive biologic therapies to maintain their quality of life, it forces an inevitable massive economic collision. Will the sheer compounding financial burden of these advanced, life-extending biological therapies eventually break the current out-of-pocket funding model?
It has to, right?
Will it require a massive systemic overhaul of the entire pet insurance industry to make this level of care sustainable? We have to ask ourselves, are we currently watching the precise historical moment where the companion animal transitions permanently from being a discretionary, emotional consumer expense into a lifetime, non-negotiable?
That is a staggering, heavy thought to leave you with. As the biological science rapidly advances to cure the incurable, the fundamental financial infrastructure of pet ownership is going to have to evolve just as rapidly, or the entire economic system supporting it will fracture. Thank you for joining us on this incredibly detailed custom exploration of Zoetis, the complex mechanics of the fiscal alignment paradox, and the profound implications of the science-to-scale biological inflection. We hope this granular analysis provided you with the clarity required to see straight through the short-term accounting noise, allowing you to fully grasp the deep structural mechanics that are actively driving the future of the global animal health market. Risk defined, portfolio protected.